Once again, it's Ken Scott on behalf of Fortis Publishing and Gutenberg Press this time. And we have one of our authors, Sharon Waite, where are you, Sharon, exactly?
In Cornwall, in deep,
Lovely
darkest
Cornwall.
Cornwall.
Darkest Cornwall. And what's the weather like in Cornwall at the moment?
Today it's all right. Yesterday it was blowing a hoolie and it was galing horrendous. It was horrendous yesterday.
And I saw a video on Facebook the other day where you look as if you live in a wonderful place and you've got chickens and you've got new geese.
Yes.
But it did look cold, I must admit. You were all wrapped up as you were shooing the geese into the wherever it is you were shooing them into. It looked a lovely spot. But you look wrapped up.
It's one of the downfalls. We've got fantastic views on the mountains and Router and everything like that. But the price for being so high is that it's so windy.
Well, I can relate to that because we used to live in a place called Otterburn, and we lived right up on the moor as well. It was 1,500 feet above sea level, and I used to leave work literally at sea level, and it could be 19, 20 degrees in the summer, and I would get up to where we were, and it had dropped to about 11 or 12. It was an incredible drop in temperature, and the winter was worse again, you know.
Yeah, definitely. It does make a difference, that's for sure. But you have to remember when you see that sun rising in the morning and say good morning to the sun, you have to remember that actually, you know, you're very fortunate.
Yeah. Well, you've painted a nice picture of where you are and where you live and the sort of lifestyle you live. And I often think, where the hell did you get time to write a book? But you have written a book. You've called it, the title's wonderful. It's called Titch, Life in One Sentence. And first and foremost, let me ask you about the actual title. And I don't know, is Titch your nickname?
Titch has always been my family name. It's really strange because from since I was tiny, I've always been Titch because I was the smallest of the family. So it's kind of stuck with me, and it's only my siblings that still use Titch. You know, everyone else knows me as Shazza or Sharon or anything like that. But it's only my siblings that call me Titch still, but I've kept it for that.
And Life in One Sentence, and I know I haven't read the full book, Sharon, I do confess, I've read a lot of it, and I know that Life in One Sentence, you went through an incredible experience, really. You were married first time round, and I understand there was it wasn't domestically wonderful, and you had to leave. You had 2 twin children, I believe, and you left because you were worried, concerned about their safety and your safety, and you got on with life, and you met a nice guy. You were claiming benefits at the time as a single parent. And you met a nice guy called Mark, and everything was hunky-dory. And then one day, and this was the incredible bit in the book, and I'll let you take it up from this point, one day armed police turned up at the house.
Yeah, basically I had we'd had a warning from the social services because what had happened, I'd been claiming benefits as a single mum, and it was rightly so. You know, I was living in a rental and I didn't have a full-time job and everything like that, so I claimed for help, which was right to do. But where I went wrong was Mark eventually moved in with me. He wasn't working, so I couldn't see a way forward other than carrying on claiming because he wasn't working, I wasn't working. I had twins, and it was like, what are we going to do? So I carried on, but it's just not having guidance, not thinking too deeply about anything. And it's just being silly, really, not to think about the consequences. But yeah, so that's what happened. And we had a warning. And as soon as I had a warning, I said, that's it, I've got to go out there. And I went and got a full-time job, turned my life around. You know, Mark was working then and everything changed, you know, but it was too late. And I thought that we'd rescued it by getting a full-time job, you know, we was going to pay them back and everything like that. But then literally armed police turned up on the doorstep. There was about 13 of them. And it was like 6 o'clock in the morning and the twins were still in bed. And I was like, what on earth is going on? And it was purely because Mark had a shotgun license that they thought he might be dangerous.
Oh.
So they sent armed police to,
Mhm.
to do the business.
Mhm.
And then took us in for questioning and everything else then, and that's how it started.
Now, obviously, I've never been on benefits as such, but my understanding of it, Sharon, is that because he'd moved in with you, then should you have should you have told the authorities and reported his situation, and
Yeah.
then would have reassessed your benefits and that
Yeah,
sort of thing?
definitely.
And
That's
you did.
exactly what I should have done. What I should have done is told the benefits a change in situation. And then they would have reassessed it and everything would have changed, and be differently. But I think I was just worried at the time because, we if if they knew both of us was working there, we wouldn't get any benefit at all. And
Mhm.
we didn't have any money coming in. So how was we going to live? And
Yeah.
it's just kind of an insight as to at the time, it was all very strange because I'd just lost my father as well.
Mhm.
So it was all very different, and I put it a lot of it down to I wasn't in the right state of mind as what I was thinking. What on earth was I thinking of? And just everything, and it was just all too much was on top of me. That was
So,
all.
so fast forward to the. I'm going to ask you about the book in a second, but obviously this is what the book's all about. A prison sentence, yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me how long.
Well, they gave me 9 months.
Mm-hmm.
I obviously didn't know at the time when they, as soon as they started saying, we feel that we've got to make an example of you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wasn't expecting a prison sentence. I was expecting community service and a
Mm-hmm.
payback and everything like that. Because, like I say, I'd turned my life around. I'd got myself a
Mm-hmm.
full-time job, and I'd been working in that full-time job for 2 years by the time they actually charged me.
Mm-hmm.
It's unreal, isn't it? So yeah, my life had kind of moved on,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't expecting it at all. And as soon as they said we feel like we've got to make an example of you to deter other people from doing the same thing, it all kind of went into a fog. Everything then became foggy, and my mind was fogged. Everything was fogged and blurred. I couldn't hear anything. I just knew that he'd sentenced me to 9 months. He did say something about 4 years, that they could have sentenced me to 4 years because of the height of the
Mm-hmm.
calculation. But he said 9 months it was going to be. And then he just put the hammer down. And before I knew it, I was being led away by one of the guards. And by that time, I was completely unfocused. I couldn't focus on anything other than what was happening, and it had all become a blur. And I remember this guard saying to me, his first words were, he said, don't panic, don't panic. So he obviously see what the situation was. Um, he said, don't panic. He said, it's automatically halved. So
Mm-hmm.
you will be out for Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
So that was all I kept in my mind. And I kept
Mm-hmm.
thinking, it's okay, I'm going to be out for Christmas. I'm going to be out for Christmas. It'll be all right. It'll be okay. And it was a difficult
But it
time.
must. I mean, it's a life
Yeah.
changing experience, and consequently, you've written a book about it. And tell us a little bit about the book. It's not all about the time in prison, is it?
No, it's not. And the whole reason about my writing the book was all my life I've written diaries. All my life I've got a mountain of diaries from year to year. And so I'm used to writing down my daily events.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened when I was put away, it became a natural thing to me to write my daily events down. So I wrote my daily diary in prison. Then when I came out of prison, it got put away as a bad mark in my life and put it in the cupboard and try and get on with life and try and rebuild. And then what I found myself doing, I felt a need to pay back society
Mm-hmm.
afterwards, and hence why I took on the cycling. I
Mm-hmm.
took on the raising money for cancer research and everything. And by doing it, I found cycling and I thought, I haven't cycled since I was 16, but
Mhm.
I'll do it. I was, 40, whatever I was, 44. And I thought, I'm going to do this. And so I signed up for it.
Mhm.
And it made me feel good because it
Mhm.
made me feel like I was giving something back that
Yeah.
I'd taken.
Mhm.
And that was what started the whole point of everything. So then I'd done my diaries for my cycling,
Mhm.
and they became part of the whole bag of
Mhm.
what I was writing about. It wasn't until years later that I actually sat down and put them all together
Mhm.
and started writing a book about it. And it was
Mhm.
when I think I'd sat down after I'd done the cycling twice. And I think it was actually when I was then poorly
Mhm.
and I had time on my hands and I sat and writing and thinking, well, actually, this makes sense. What's happened to me,
Mhm.
my recovery is my paying back, and
Mhm.
it's giving
You,
back is
you've
a
got
payback.
a very philosophical view about the whole situation. My automatic reaction when I read the first part of the book was I would have been very angry and bitter towards the authorities. I mean, when you see, you've only got to pick up, I would say, a daily newspaper. It's more or less all online these days,
Yeah,
but you've really just got to look at an odd article and you see burglars getting suspended sentence and people that have dished out a hell of a lot of violence and they get community service.
yeah,
And even serious crimes of sexual assault and dare I say it, rape, that tend to only get a few years in prison and that these days. And then, as you
yeah,
so rightly describe in the book, you're 2 years down the line, you've got a good job, you're working full time, you're not claiming any benefits. And then the armed police come to the house, and then you get sentenced for 9 months. And okay, I don't know, you didn't do 9 months, but I would have been raging sitting in my little prison cell,
do you know
day after day after day.
that thought never occurred to me,
No,
never,
and
never
that's
once occurred to me.
I
The
take my hat off to you for that,
Yeah,
and
it was
very inspirational read.
it was more of a case of, I mean, the thing is, I understand what you're saying about you could look at other criminals and think, well, they got away with it, why didn't I?
Hmm.
But that's not my way. It's not my way. And I'm a great believer in karma.
Hmm.
Them prisoners that did do things wrong and intentionally did them wrong and
Hmm.
knew exactly what they're doing, they will be paying back at some time in their life or in their afterlife, but they will be paying back.
Hmm.
And I didn't want that on my conscience. That's not where I'm from.
Hmm.
Um, and I have great respect for the authorities actually. And I've never, I think the worst I've ever been in trouble before is a parking fine, or a speeding ticket.
I
I've
was
never
I
ever.
was gonna ask you, had you never been in trouble before?
No,
Because
never.
again, I think, to use your words, they wanted to make an example of you because of what
Yeah.
had happened. But I was wondering if you'd had a little bit of a checkered past or something. But
No, not at all. Not at
you
all.
know,
I'd lived a very sheltered life, I suppose, in one respect, and that's why in the start of the book I explain about my life before.
hmm.
That I was brought up with my dad, and I had an idyllic childhood. I had a lovely life.
Hmm.
He was a bit of a, when somebody knocked on the front door, and if it was the TV man or the electric man, we'd have to quickly, don't open the door, don't open the door, and
Hmm.
he'd sort of, it'd been fixing the electric meter or the TV thing or whatever, and then he'd put it right, and then he'd open the door. So he was a bit like that, and that was how my life was. And you
Yeah.
know, Uncle Charlie would come up with the latest. Do you want any of this, John?
Yeah. Yeah.
That had been pinched from somewhere off the back of a lorry or something. But that was the height of, the wrongdoings or in my
Yeah.
family. It wasn't anything
What
like
was
that.
the reaction of your family when you went inside, and your friends and things? Could they believe it?
Well,
Was everybody stunned?
I hadn't told any of my friends at all. Obviously, it was all in the papers and everything. So a lot of the people, I was ashamed. I was really
Mm,
ashamed. And I was worried when I was inside. I was worried about what people would think of me. Would, you know, when I came out, and I was worried about what the children were going through, and rightly so, because the children had a rough time at school from
How
it.
how old were they at the time?
13. The twins were 13, and
Mhm.
Joshua was just 5. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Now, again, I don't want you to give too much of the book away, because there's a fair bit about it, which is obviously the Prison Diaries. Is there any real experience that one particular experience that springs to mind you can tell potential readers about?
what, from inside?
Yeah.
Um.
How
Oh,
did the
do you know? I'm going to say one. There was one time. There was lots of experiences and stuff that happened and everything, but you know, how to reflect on it is different. But there was one time I went to an open prison, and most of the people in an open prison are end of life or end of long term. You know, there's not very many that are short term prisoners in there. You know, usually sorry, just something. Usually they have done a lifetime of prison, and then they go to open prison to try to readjust to life.
Yeah.
Before they're released. And there was one time when I went to open prison. I was working on a farm in the open prison, and one of the ladies, I won't say her now, obviously, but one of the ladies in the open prison, she'd been inside for an awful long time, and she fully accepted what she'd done. She'd murdered her husband, and she fully accepted it, and she was living with the regret of it and everything. But what happened, we was told to go and clear one of the houses for a new farm hand that was coming to be employed, and he was going to be starting on the Monday. So we all went into this house to clean it up and, you know, hang new curtains and everything like that. And this lady absolutely broke down in tears, and we couldn't work out what was going on, what was the problem. And so we all rushed over to her and comforted her and everything, and said, you know, what's the problem? And we took her out of the house, and she said, I have never been inside a house for 23 years. And to see the inside of a house with curtains hanging on the window and carpets on the floor, she said it brought it all back to me at how I miss a home and being in a house. And that was quite a significant moment, you know, not for anything to do with the prison, but just the fact that it had such an impact on this one person, you know, and it had an impact on all of us, I think, because of that.
And 23 years she'd been locked up for.
Yeah, so far, but she still had a few to go.
Good God.
Still had a few to go. So yeah, it was.
Do you keep in touch with any of the prisoners?
A couple of them. Oh, sorry. A couple of them are yeah, they're still known to me. So, you know, obviously be mindful about.
I was thinking about editing that bit out, but I think we'll probably leave it in. It just kind of sums you. I'm a big doggy person as well, you know.
Sorry.
Just to ask you, I lost my train of thought. So the question I asked you was, do you keep in touch with any of the prisoners?
Yeah,
You said
just
yes.
a few of them are still in touch with me. Yeah. It was funny. I saw one a few years back, and I was just I went to a market down somewhere, and one of the girls was actually, I do write about her in the book. She went on and done a pig farm, because we worked on a pig farm, and she bought some of the pigs off of the farm at prison and started her own big pig business.
Fantastic.
So yeah, so I saw her at the front, and it was like, wow, what the hell? And she recognised me, and we recognised each other, and yeah, it was nice. But I do often think about some of the others, you know, whether they're now out, whether they've managed to regain their life, or you know, whatever.
Yeah, I helped a guy with a book, a guy called Pete Saunders. His book's out in the probably February, I would think. It's in editing at the moment. Terrific book, and through the course of his life, he was abused as a child, and he started a charity, and he ended up going to prison to talk to prisoners about this. And I remember one of the quotes in his book was, "There's a lot of lovely people in prison, through no fault of their own." And he also did say that the majority of the prisoners in there have suffered horrendous abuse in childhood and as children and as young adults. And you reminded me of him, and he said that there is a lot of nice people in prison, you know. And you were treated okay. There was no real sort of malice or anything, you know.
There was a couple of points with the other inmates. There was a time in the first prison which was quite a rough prison that I went to. It's kind of like a holding prison where they sort you all out. So they decide where you're going to go on to. That was quite an eye-opener. But, you know, saying that, I met some nice people there. I met some really good people, and they used to put me alongside. There was another girl there that was really struggling with life, and she'd, you know, done what she'd done, and she had children and she couldn't see her children, and she was really struggling, and she was on suicide watch. So, you know, they put me kind of like her minder, or not her minder, but her kind of
yeah,
that's it. And so, you know, sort of had that sort of camaraderie, and the guards all kind of took to me, you know, because they used to say to me, "Oh, we've got a new person coming in, can you go in and do the room?" And I'd go in to the room, I'd make the bed, I'd turn the sheet back and put a little mint on the pillow like a hotel. And they loved it. They thought it was hilarious. But yeah, no, I got on well with the guards and whoever. And obviously the hardened criminals, I had to bite my tongue because I had an opinion on them, and I didn't. You know, you can't express opinions in there. You know,
the way you're talking during this interview, Sharon, it almost, I know it almost sounds as if you had quite a nice time in there.
The thing is, what it is, you've got to put them in categories. So the prison was my life then, and my home life I had to put in a different category because I couldn't think about it, because you can't think about the children and what they're doing and schooling and are they okay, because there's nothing you can do about it. You had to rely on the people at home to do what you were doing, you know. So
there's so many questions I feel I want to ask you, but if you tell me them, then it's going to be a spoiler for the book. And I don't want to ask. I was just wanting to ask you the question, but I don't want you to tell me how did the children react. How did they react when you came out? Was Mark still there? Lots and lots of questions, but I think those questions really should be probably not answered, and because well, obviously you and we want people that answered in the book. And I am actually going to order. I've got a little bit of time over the Christmas holidays where I haven't got any projects on, and I think I will definitely you know, get it downloaded onto my Kindle and finish the book, because if I remember right, it was a lot of months ago now, but I'm sure I read about the first 10,000 words, because I'm one of the guys that approves whether the book needs to, you know, goes to the next stage. And I always read about 10,000 words and think, yeah, that's a good one. And I remember reading yours, and I remember saying, oh, I can't wait to read that, and once it's published and that. But of course, I get so many books.
Yeah, I can imagine
them all. But I'm definitely going to download it on the Kindle and try and get it finished.
What I say to everyone that says to me, oh, you know, we're going to buy your book, we're going to read your book, can't wait to read your book. What I say to everyone is, you must read it to the end, because it turns around. You know, you've got to go the whole journey with me. You can't just dip and choose and flick through pages and then pick up a few words in one. You've got to read it from start to finish to see the whole picture.
Yeah. Well, it's a great title, no doubt a great book. Your reviews, I had a little check of the reviews on Amazon this morning before I spoke to you. They're all 5-star reviews,
Yeah,
which is
I've had
really, I mean, you should be quite proud of that, to be
I've
perfectly
had
honest.
such a good response from
Yeah.
people. I've had so many messages coming through where
Mhm.
they say I'm such an inspiration. It
Yeah.
really is. And I'd
Yeah.
never dreamed for a million years
Mhm.
that that's the sort of response I would get. But I
Yeah.
had, and it's been so nice to get that. And some of them are from people that know me from the past where I used to live, neighbours and um, friends, but not daily friends,
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
like people I know of. And they've actually reached out to me and messaged me
Mhm.
because
Brilliant.
they've read the book, and
Yeah.
it's like, wow, I can't believe people have actually taken the time to read it and
Yeah.
actually find me and make contact to let me know what they thought. So I'm really, really
And
proud.
bear in mind as well, I don't know what your sales are, but bearing in mind as well that for every review you get, that they do say that's equivalent to about 50 people reading your book. There's only one in
Oh, okay.
50 ever post a review
Yeah.
that read a book. So, I know there's not hundreds of reviews on there at the moment, but yeah, you're definitely touching people. You're definitely
It's still
having an
early
effect.
days.
Yeah, and it's early days, and things like these interviews and the podcasts and
Okay.
things, keep posting. You've certainly got a message to get out there, Sharon, and I've really enjoyed talking to you. And you certainly you've clearly inspired a lot of people. Is there, final question, is there a plan for a book too?
I've already started.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And what's that one about?
This one is fictional,
Uh-huh.
not non-fiction,
Okay.
and I've already decided the title will be Titch, Life in a Cornish Coastal Cafe. Because
Uh,
some of the people I meet and some of
yeah.
the stories is unbelievable.
I
So
can
yeah,
imagine. And what's just give me quickly because we haven't got long left now. But what's the plot? What have you pulled together by way of
right.
fiction?
Well, the plot is basically it's going to be on the fiction side, but it's going
And
to
don't
take
give
place.
too much away.
No, it's going to be a woman that comes from up Hampshire or somewhere like that, Cotswolds, has a change of life and break up with her husband and
Mhm.
comes to Cornwall to find her escape. And she takes on a little part-time job in a
Mhm.
Cornish coastal cafe, and
Mhm.
it's all the different people that she's met and the situations that she's having
Right.
then.
Right. Okay. That sounds intriguing. It sounds
It's going to
very
be fun.
intriguing. Uh, but listen, Sharon, it's been wonderful, wonderful talking to you. Titch, Life in One Sentence is the name of the book by Sharon Waite on Amazon and all good bookstores to be ordered near you. That's what they say anyway. But getting your book in a bookstore is very, very difficult, as we all know.
Yeah.
But it's there available to order. Congratulations on a great book. I will download it and finish it over the Christmas period, and we'll catch up with you in the new year, no doubt. Looking forward to the fiction book. When can we expect to get that? Have you got a deadline on
Oh,
it?
no, I haven't given a set. So I think it's going to be probably the end of this next year,
Okay,
probably.
then. Well, that's
Yeah.
great. Well, listen, you have a wonderful Christmas and a very prosperous new year. Thank you for sharing your thoughts with us.
Thank
And
you
as
for
I
your time
say, the
again.
book, once again, Titch, Life in One Sentence, available at Amazon and all good bookstores.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.